morning on St George's Day, a day which all English and British people should be rightfully proud. Is it to do with dragons? Is it to do with knights? Is it to do with men on horseback? Partially. I'm just waiting for these zombies, yes, these zombie clerics who've, barely understand English to come online saying how St George was nothing to do with England. Well, yes, we know this. In fact, the Red Cross, which you see all over these St George emblems, is indicative of our involvement in several Christian crusades, as the Red Cross I'm wearing now. It's nothing to do with dragons, it's nothing to do with anything. We've got this narrative of recent years where brown is good, white is evil. Saladin's gangsters must have been good. They followed that old religion of peace. That slaughtered about 250 million people. So they must be good, mustn't they? Basically, this Red Cross, which you see all over the Empire flags and the Cross of England, is of course derived from the Christian Crusader cross. The French and the English were the only primary movers in the Christian Crusades. Of course, the entire Middle East was Christian dominated from the year of our Lord 0, from his birth, for approximately, over 600 years before a certain Mohammad, a gangster, a mass killer, a greedy person, a warlord who took 20% of all the slaves. He took all the slaves he sold, yes. Old Mohammed was a slave dealer and a mass killer in their holy writings, in the Hadiths, in the Sunnah and in the Quran. It states quite clearly, he smited them about their necks. This is that perfect individual, the perfect role model to all zombies. Yes, so perfect. In 1098, the French mainly, and with some English help, mounted the First Crusade to try and get back Jerusalem, which they invaded and looted, and of course they took all the civilian girls and little boys and they sold them as sex slaves, as Islam has done and ISIS have done forever. You can imagine, many years later, with a very warlike, disjointed Europe, Pope Urban realised something had to be done. They'd lost all of Palestine, all the Christian territories. The Seljuk Turks, who are notoriously cruel, they used to do tricks like skinning people alive for fun. They used to do kazook, which is basically ramming a long sharpened steel pole up through the body of Christians for fun. They used to run the horses' hooves over the heads of infants. They were still doing this in 1915 in Turkey to the Christian Armenians. This is how cruel they were. And it was purely Islam. It's always been based on envy, invasion, greed, blitzkrieg tactics on undefended villages. This is why when Richard the First, King Lionheart, whose statue is outside the Houses of Parliament, actually got an army together and had hundreds of ships built and requisitioned all the ships and sailed to the Holy Land, they didn't know what had hit him, because he was a well-established, fine military man, a pious man, a pious Catholic who wrote songs for the Catholic Church, which still survive today. Would you believe this? Songs written in 800-900 years ago still survive today. I mean, it would never reach number one, but they are there. King Richard songs. Google it. It's on YouTube. About 70,000 peasants, 70,000 serfs, ordinary English people, lords from all over the country, even from just a few miles away down here in Cheshire. They went on crusade. They went on crusade to try and get back the Holy Land. They succeeded in the First Crusade, and then of course Saladin, losing face, reconquered it. Butchered the defenders. Again, took it by blitzkrieg tactics, which was copied by Adolf Hitler in World War II, as was the Holocaust. The first Holocaust was in Turkey of Christians by the Islamic Young Turks. Google it, 1915 Armenian massacre. They took great pleasure torturing vast numbers of innocent Christians. 1.5 million innocent Christians were slaughtered by the 1915 Young Turks. Yes, and which religion did they follow? Which ideology did they follow? It wasn't Christianity. Yes, so when you hear this far left, like Labour, middle class thing where, oh, Crusades are bad, oh, Islam is perfect, Islam is beautiful. Islam is beautiful, is it really? When it still does female genital mutilation all over England, in Bradford, in London, it's been proven, all over the USA, wherever they settle, they bring this savagery with them. And Islam, I'm sorry to say, is extremely supremacist, is racist against black people, against dark-skinned people, because the Prophet was a very white-skinned man. You won't know this unless you read it in the Quran. He was white-skinned. This is what, and he also, in the Quran, had the staying power, had the virility of 30 men at 50 odd years of age. Yeah, you really believe that, guys? At my sort of age, he had the virility of 30 young men. Yeah, well, if you want to believe this book that was written 200 years after the old dog was poisoned. Yes, this is why Islam and those zombies hate the Jews so much, because the woman that poisoned old Mo, and it took a long while for him to die, of course he was made ill and bedridden, was a Jewish woman, a Jewish slave. He'd done his normal trick, he'd slaughtered all the menfolk, he'd taken her actual children away from her, sold them as sexual slaves to old Arab perverts for gold. And then this Jewish woman, I could get the name for you, but it's a bit irrelevant now, all these years later. Yes, she didn't even deny it. She didn't even deny she poisoned him. So you've done all this to my village, you've wiped my village out, Kaaba. You wiped Kaaba out, you've killed my nephews, you've killed my granddad, you've killed my brothers, and you've took all our children. You know, she didn't even deny it. That's how proud she was. She sold off the old dog. Yeah, the perfect individual, really. But he was a paedophile. Anyway, I'll cut a long story short. If you're lucky enough to be born in England, you should be very proud of our old Richard the Lionheart. You should be proud of the 60,000-70,000 volunteers that went off to fight Saladin, a lot of whom never came back. I mean, our finest hour might have been World War II, but in the olden days, certainly our finest hour was the Christian Crusades. Richard III, England and France, Philip II, the heroes of Christendom. If it wasn't for the fact that the German Barbarossa died on the way and most of his 100,000 men turned back, we would have had a Christian empire all over the Middle East from then till now. And imagine how good that would have been. I mean, what good has Islam done for humanity? I mean, even apostates, ex-Islamic people have stated it's not civilized. It's not civilized, it's a curse on humanity. And it really is. So anyway, we always remember when you're talking about St. George's Day, we alone ended the slave trade. We alone brought the rule of law to, which is largely been lost now, to the likes of Pakistan, to the likes of Bangladesh, to the likes of Africa. Islam has produced very little for the world. There was one guy that was involved in some equations years ago. Apart from that, even the whole ideology is stolen from the Bible. It's stolen from the Jewish Torah. Do you know that? If you read the Quran like I have done, all the way through it mentions Mary Magdalene, Jesus' mother, it mentions Abraham. These are all over 600 years before Mohammad, even reared his ugly head. Mohammad only got going about 620 AD. As we know, 0 AD was the birth of Christ, and the whole of the Middle East had been a lot more peaceful. Unfortunately, we didn't have defences to defend against this next false prophet, and had been Christian and built a wonderful civilization in the Middle East. It's never reached that far even now. In one part of Syria, Google 700 dead cities. And in just one little small part of northern Aleppo, where the land's quite fertile, there were villages and cities there where they built reservoirs, they could withstand any drought. They were very successful farmers, traders, jewellers, really, and they were all wiped out by Islam. And there's a few refugees living there now. Have a look, you can still see the churches and where ISIS have shot away the crosses because they try and deny there was anything before. Old Mo, the throat-slitting slave dealer, the white man who traded in black slaves. So remember that. And he himself called black men raisin heads, stupid monkeys, only fit for hard labour and castration. This was the perfect Mo, the slave dealer, killer, Mohammad. So have a good, please try and celebrate. I know it's a normal working day, but if you can take your wife for a meal or have a beer or whatever, say a prayer if you're into that. Please do try and celebrate St. George's Day. We should start teaching our kids the truth about the Crusades, about evil Islam, about Muhammad's throat slitting, about his warlike behaviour, about his slave dealing, about his assassinations, about his paedophilia. This is part of being English, is speaking the truth when it needs to be spoken. Okay, have a good one. Bye bye.